Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Fearless leader will join us shortly, but for now I'm at the helm. I am Sir Knight Gabe Jagush. I am the Junior Warden of Worth Commandery number 19, Knights Templar.
I am Billy Hamilton. I am the standard bearer for Worth Commandery number 19, Knights Templar.
And we have a special guest tonight.
Hey everybody, I'm Jack Harper. I am a past commander from Sweetwater Commandery number 89, Hillsborough Commandery number 39, Waco Commandery number 10, and I'm also a past Grand Commander for the Grand Commandery Knights Templar of Texas. And for the next 3 years, I hold the title of South Central Department Commander for the Grand Encampment of Knights Templar, and I'm over the states of Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Jack, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We know that your schedule is crazy busy, so we appreciate you making the time to come and visit with us.
I'm glad to do it, guys. I'm really excited about it, and I'm really looking forward to it, and looking forward to spending time with you all and answering your questions and talking to everyone else out there.
All right. We have a couple of discussion questions, which we'll shear down to one discussion question. Billy, you picked out one that you'd seen and you'd had some interest in. Could you tell us about that question?
Sure. So this one was actually on Reddit in the Freemason board, and it's from a user, Anonymous Freemason. And when you hear the content, it's kind of obvious why he picked that. So his comment was, he's in a suburban lodge with a mixture of older and young brothers. His worshipful master is one of the older brothers and very conservative and a huge supporter of the current president, but this particular brother is not. So at lodge, though, he was pulled aside by his worshipful master and told that in no circumstances could he attend a rally scheduled in a few weeks and if he did, his worshipful master would actually bring him up on Masonic charges. When he asked his worshipful master why, he was told that he should respect the president and not take any action against the stability of the country, and that if he drove there, he would be representing the craft because he has Masonic emblems on his car. So when basically the brothers' conundrum was that, while you're not supposed to bring up politics in lodge, what is he supposed to do when he is being threatened with Masonic charges for acting on his political beliefs outside of lodge?
And so the worshipful master is threatening to bring him up on those charges?
Yes.
Well, I mean, realistically, I'd just say, I'd like to see him try. It's one of those things that, in order to get, I guess, convicted or penalized or however you want to say it at a Masonic trial, you have to have actually engaged in a Masonic disciplinary violation. Now, some disciplinary codes are very vague, right? I know that I'm trying to remember offhand what state I'm thinking of, but one of them is conduct unbecoming of a gentleman, right? But, that can encompass a lot of things, or it might not encompass a lot of things depending on who's running the trial.
Well, an interesting point here, though, is the worshipful master, right? Again, you're not supposed to really bring politics or religion into lodge because it does disrupt peace and harmony. But here, in a way, the worshipful master is using his office to, push a particular political point of view. And I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but it seems inappropriate. On that's my personal take anyways. On the worshipful master's brother, right? On his part, whether he's for or against I feel like it's something that shouldn't have been brought up in lodge at all.
Yeah, that's I'm okay with going and having political conversations even at the lodge dinner table, which that's kind of cutting it close. But usually it's in good spirits. It's never anything heated. But I don't know if it's something that once you're talking about bringing up people on charges, that kind of thing, acting in a capacity as an officer when discussing a political position, that's when, that's not appropriate. I don't even care to see lodges engage specifically with sectarian charities, right? That's one thing that I know a lot of lodges work closely with a lot of churches and stuff, but we are non-sectarian. We are non-political. If we do work with a sectarian charity, then we should probably keep it on the down low. That's just my take on it, though.
Right. Or, maybe have others to kind of balance it out to show that there's no preference there. The way it should be.
But yeah, as for the brother running into the problem, I would just say go, and if you want to attend the rally, go attend the rally. Know that there will be friction from the guy acting as worshipful master. Don't expect no trouble, but also know that you probably have the upper hand when it comes to actually dealing with the jurisprudence of that issue.
Right. Yeah. And not only that, but, if you, peaceable assembly is one of the rights as Americans. As long as you act in that manner, obviously don't riot or anything like that. I don't see how anyone can really, look down upon you for, showing your political beliefs outside of lodge, no matter what side of the political spectrum that may fall upon.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone's told this worshipful master about those unruly brethren we call the founding fathers. So, something about stability of the government, quiet and peaceable subject. George Washington didn't really care.
Right.
Well, brethren.
That was technically outside of lodge.
Yeah, technically outside of lodge. So, brethren, for tonight, or this morning, or whenever you're listening to the podcast, but tonight for the recording, our subject is Commandery, Knights Templar, Chivalric Masonry, as propagated by the Grand Encampment of the Knights Templar of the United States of America, basically KT General. And our special guest is Sir Knight Jack Harper, the Right Eminent Department Commander of the South Central Department for the Grand Encampment. And Jack, we'd like to start with a couple of more personal questions before we move into the meat of the subject. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the Masonic lens?
Yeah, thanks. And again, Gabe, Billy, Rhit, and everyone, good evening. And I appreciate the opportunity to be invited to be on your show. In my day job, I do local government work. For the last 25 years, I've been involved in city management, and I've worked in basically almost every part of the state, Central Texas, West Texas, and now currently I am the city manager of Fulshear, which is a little bit west of Houston or pretty close to the Katy area. It is actually the fastest growing city in the United States by percentage. 7 years ago, it was 300 people, and by 2025, it's due to be about 100,000 people. So it is a really high-growth area, and I'm really excited to be here after spending the last 12 years in the Waco area. So as a city manager, it's my job I work for the city council, and I am an appointed position. And basically, the city council is like the board of directors, and the city manager is like the chief executive officer. They set the policy, and I run the city. So police, fire, water, wastewater, streets, parks, recreation, swimming pools, airports, cemeteries, all of those wonderful things. I get to make sure are up and operating efficiently and in a high-performing manner, and make sure that the citizens are happy. So that's what I do in my day job, and I am a two-time proud graduate of Texas Tech University. Graduated with a bachelor's degree in political science and a master's in public administration. So local government is my passion, and in addition to that, I also do some undergraduate and graduate teaching for a couple of different universities in Texas and the United States, typically along the lines of state government, federal government, and public administration. So that is really what I enjoy doing when I'm not doing masonry.
I understand in addition to all that, you're also heavily involved in the Boy Scouts. You also teach the emergency and incident control and management system as part of, I believe it was the Forestry Service?
Yes. So I have been active in Boy Scouts for 39 years. Started in 1979, and I just have loved it and been a part of it ever since. And I'm an Eagle Scout and just really enjoyed pretty much every Boy Scout activity there is, and currently enjoying spending time in Boy Scouts with my son, Jake. Jake is getting ready to turn 11 in a couple of weeks, and he is active in Cub Scouts, and I was his Cub Master for a while until we recently moved and I accepted this new position down in the Houston area. So big believer in Boy Scouts. It helped teach me a lot of the leadership lessons that I use today, and really, really enjoy it. And that's actually where I learned my first bit of involvement in incident management or emergency management. And for the last 8 years, I have worked for the U.S. Forest Service, serving on Type 1 and Type 2 incident management teams. And those are wildland fire management teams that travel all across the United States, handling the biggest and baddest of the wildfires. So when you see in the news recently about fires in Yosemite or Yellowstone, those are the kinds of fires I've gone to. In fact, prior to this year, the last fire in Yosemite I was there for in California. So I really enjoy doing that, enjoy working for the U.S. Forest Service and helping folks out. And one of the jobs they have me do is they have me translate basically wildland fire to government, and then I translate government back to wildland fire. So I really enjoy doing that, and I really enjoy helping other people. And all of that all comes from my time and involvement with the Boy Scouts, and pretty much everything I've done and that's involved leadership and management, I can trace back to my time in the Boy Scouts as a youth.
Very cool, especially that you get to share that now with your own son.
Yes, and Jake loves it. It's pretty funny. I've got pictures of him when he was like 3 years old, both wearing my Cub Scout uniform from the late 70s, early 80s, but also wearing my wildland fire gear. And that is a thrill as a parent to watch their son grow up and to, hopefully have them maybe kind of follow in your footsteps, but yet at the same time be their own man, and I very much want him to be his own person. But what a joy it does certainly give to me to be able to see him do that and to spend time with him and hopefully have him do the things that I love to do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's always more fun when they like what you like.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And when they like what you like voluntarily.
That's the key. Yeah. Otherwise, they didn't really like it anyway.
Exactly.
No, I've always been intrigued at the Boy Scouts translating into Masonry. I don't know if you know Brian Dodson, the past Grand Master, who was Eagle Scout as well. And he's really a big proponent of Masons being involved with Boy Scouts, because they make good Masons.
Oh, they do. And, of course, I know past Grand Master Dodson and as an Eagle Scout myself, again, I very much am proud of that, and that's actually part of the reason why I became a Mason. But what I can tell you is I do like it that the Grand Lodge of Texas, at least, we do have a letter that we send out to Eagle Scouts, And certainly we hope that that's a segment, or that's some potential youth that maybe we could attract and bring into Masonry. But I actually got my love of Masonry and my desire to really want to be a Mason, not simply because of things my dad and grandmother had done, and I can talk about that later. But while in Boy Scouts, as a youth, I was very active in an organization known as the Order of the Arrow, and that is basically the National Honor Society for Boy Scout campers. And in the Order of the Arrow, it actually has 3 ceremonies, and those ceremonies were written by Masons. And the founders of the Order of the Arrow and the Boy Scouts were Masons. And when I went through the Order of the Arrow as a youth, I totally fell in love with it, loved the ritualistic aspect. And to this day, I'm in the Order of the Arrow and spend a lot of time doing it. But my passion is and has always been ritual. And I can certainly trace my time in the Boy Scouts, and even today still doing Order of the Arrow work, because of the symbolism and Masonry that is translated down into the Order of the Arrow ceremonies.
So, speaking about how it kind of led you, almost for you like a natural progression into Masonry, when did you actually join a Blue Lodge, and how old were you?
Yeah, so Billy, I joined Masonry in 2003. I did the Order of the Arrow work as a youth, and also as a youth, I knew that my father had been a DeMolay. He never became a Mason. But my grandmother, who many folks in Texas have met, I refer to her as Nana. She turns 94 years old next month. And also in January of 2019, she will actually become a 75-year member of the Order of the Eastern Star. Wow. And so when I was a youth, I knew that my father was a DeMolay and my grandmother was an Eastern Star, and I would always go with her to her installations and other meetings. So I was always aware of Eastern Star. So I had my father as a DeMolay, my grandmother and my mother, by the way, as Eastern Star members. And when I went to college and joined a fraternity, I very much enjoyed the ritualistic aspect of a social fraternity as well. And in fact, I was in charge of all the ritual for a couple of years, and I knew that I wanted to be a Mason. And it really, for me, came down to timing. And it was when I was the city manager of a city by the name of Stamford, just north of Abilene. And at that time, my wife was working in Abilene, and so she had a commute, and we didn't have our son Jake yet. And some of the employees that worked for me were Masons, and the Stamford City Hall in the town square was right across the street from the lodge. And so I actually had the time, and I knew I'd always wanted to join. And it was actually my finance director that was the Mason. And I talked to him, and some of the Sir Knights in Texas will recognize his name, but his name is Jerry Pingle, who went on to become a Grand Commander of Texas. So I really enjoyed that. And again, I knew I wanted to do it. And like so many young men, it's just a matter of timing. So when I joined was 2003, and at that time I was 31 years old.
And since then, you've had a very wild ride.
I've had a very wild ride that I don't know if it has stopped yet, and that's the way I like it.
So right now, you're the Right Eminent Department Commander of the South Central Department, and you're a past Grand Commander of Texas. What other offices do you currently hold?
Other offices that I currently hold is I'm the secretary of my Allied Masonic Degrees Council. I'm the scribe of the Knight Masons Council I'm in. I'm also currently the Grand Superintendent for the Allied Masonic Degrees for Texas South. So basically every Allied Masonic Degree Council in Texas south of about the Waco area, which is Central Texas. I am responsible for administratively. And then for the last 8 years, I've been the Grand Superintendent of Knight Masons for Texas Central. So I cover administratively all the Knight Masons councils from Hillsboro, which is Central Texas, down to San Antonio, which includes Austin and Bryan. So administratively, I help those Allied Masonic degrees and Knight Masons councils do their work and facilitate any other things that they need. I am also the chief adept for both Texas College and Stella Sola College here in Texas for the Societas Rosicruciana and Civitatibus Federatus. Those are the titles that I hold in addition to the department commander role.
Wow. So you have a crazy schedule then.
Yes, but like so many of us, we get out of it what we put into it, and I Masonry has given me more than I can ever put into it, and so I really enjoy the work and all the friendships I've made, including with you two fine individuals who I had the pleasure of knighting.
Yeah, and I see the more time you put into this, it's kind of like compounding interest. The more effort you put into Masonry, it just starts giving you more, and you're like, man, you almost, it becomes addictive almost.
It does. It does. In fact, you have to watch yourself, and one of the things that Masonry teaches us, as we're all well aware of, is being mindful of our cable toe. And I can tell you, I am typically not the best one at minding the length of my cable toe, but thank goodness I have others in my life, and specifically at home. My son or our son Jake, or my wife Julie, that helps to remind me of my cable toe and to keep me grounded.
Yep.
All right. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and kind of move into the main topic for tonight, which is Knights, General Templary. The first question I really had about it was, what is your elevator speech that you give to someone about Knights Templar and what it is?
Yeah, so I'm obviously very passionate about Knights Templar, and I sometimes I feel sorry for the people I talk to because sometimes I like to have my speech be longer than the length of time we can spend in an elevator. But having said that, what I really tell people is the fact that while I love Masonry, and there is literally an organization for everyone, what I'm the most proud of about Knights Templar in particular is that it does require one to make a profession that they're willing to defend the Christian religion, and that they would be willing to support Christianity. And I'm really proud of that fact. I like the fact that the Knights Templar have a proud and long history, and I love what we're based on. So my basic speech is I tell people that this is an organization of Freemasonry that allows you to proudly, talk about Jesus Christ, to declare that you are a Christian, and allows you to do Masonic work that's based on chivalric and knights. And so many of us, as especially young boys, we grew up idolizing knights or like King Arthur, and it's really fun to bond with others who are like-minded and to do drills and work with swords and wear a uniform and do honor guards and participate in so many things. So, again, by now, maybe we're on the 10th floor, if you will, on the elevator speech. But I really just focus on the fact that it's a Christian organization, and that we're a very close organization, and we're really all a family. And that's really the bottom line to me, is that I tell people in the Knights Templar, everyone knows everyone, and we all do a great job of looking out for each other and having fun. And so that is a big part of it. if I have more time, I like to go on and talk about the various programs we have, like the Knights Templar Eye Foundation. And sure, every Masonic organization has some kind of philanthropy, but ours, which is seeking to cure cancer in eyes and cure other diseases of the eye, is very powerful. And we're taught in Masons, as Masons, and specifically in the fellowcraft degree, the importance of seeing. And that's very important to me. And lastly, the other big program we do is where we send ministers to the Holy Land, and they actually have the ability to walk in the footsteps of Christ, and really proud of that. But just, I love it. And I guess we're on about the 16th floor, so I need to cut my elevator speech. But I will tell you, fellas, that I love to spend hours talking to potential new York Rite Masons about Templary. And as many York Rite Masons know, there's not too many things I enjoy more than having a brother come up to my room or go visit in a hotel lobby or lounge and just expound more on Templary and really be able to answer any questions that a potential member may have.
So I feel like you may have already kind of answered this one, but what would you say to a Mason who is either on the fence about joining the York Rite, or maybe even a little bit resistant to kind of going out beyond the Blue Lodge, or somebody who's already gone through the capitular and cryptic degrees and is just kind of on the fence about going through the chivalric orders?
Yeah, and I think, Gabe, that something I'm really big on is my recommendation is only for a Mason I like to educate and inform them about the different Masonic organizations, but I never really want to force him to do more than he wants to do or to do more than his cable toe will allow. So I'm really big on being a little bit more low-key on things and not being like a really big high-pressure sales, because we're all busy. And many times, as we alluded to earlier, the more organizations you're in, that may afford you more opportunities for leadership, but then that's another night away from home or at another meeting. So I'm always very cognizant. And what I tell folks is something that I was taught by some of my Masonic mentors, and that is there's a Masonic organization for everyone. I encourage you to join as many as you'd like to join, or you financially can, if your cable toe will allow. And then you'll be able to specifically narrow those organizations in that you want to work in the most, or that you're the most passionate in. So having said that, being active in the Scottish Rite as well, I try to talk to the potential York Rite Masons about here's the great things that the Scottish Rite has and what the Scottish Rite has to offer, but also here's the things that the York Rite can offer. And in the United States, and specifically in Texas, there are more Scottish Rite Masons than there are York Rite Masons. But what I can also tell you is there's a very high percentage of York Rite Masons who are also Scottish Rite Masons. So I have found that the York Rite Masons are among the most active of Masons. And now to answer your question about a man who may already be a capitular and cryptic Mason, and he's contemplating going on to do his chivalric orders, I very much am open to them about the 4 chapter degrees and then the 2 council with the honorary super excellent master degree in the council, that those 7 degrees really do a good job of picking up where the master's degree left off, and how they really do finish the story in Masonry, and how they really do provide more light. But in my opinion, the Templar orders are very different than just the regular capitular and cryptic degrees, and I think they're really exciting. And so I really talk to the potential candidate about how impressive the Templar orders are, especially the Order of the Temple. but I'm also very open with potential members about what they have to be able to vouch for when they fill out the petition, which is, are they willing to support and defend the Christian religion if called upon? And I've had conversations with people who are of the Jewish faith, some people who are not really sure of what they believe in, and I really talk to them a little bit more and not in a high pressure way, because quite honestly, I want a man to be a Knights Templar because he wants to be and not because he was forced to be one.
I guess this kind of goes into what you were talking about before, where there is a long history, and especially with the Knights Templar, right, which is founded 900 years ago, and existed for almost 200 years. There's a lot of authors that attempt to link the historical Knights Templar to the Masonic Knights Templar. And as a Masonic scholar, right, because you were past master of Texas Lodge of Research and the past Grand Commander, what are your thoughts on that, I guess, romantic linking of the two organizations?
Yeah, I do always enjoy, kind of hearing that and watching those shows on television and reading many of those books myself. I do find them interesting, and I enjoy trying to see how they make the leaps or they try to make the connections. But I will tell you, as someone who tries to do very careful research, whether it's Masonry or otherwise, I personally do not believe that there is a direct lineage. My opinion is of course the Knights Templar were very real, no doubt about that. And what I really believe is just that there were a fair amount of Christian Masons who were looking for a Masonic organization to be wholly Christian. And so they basically looked around and quite honestly, what better organization could there have been than the Knights Templar? They were defenders and warriors for Christ. They protected pilgrims on the way to the Holy Land. And what an amazing history the Knights Templar have. And so I really believe that I don't know that the king and the pope were able to round up every single living Knights Templar at the time. I'm sure some probably did get away, but I personally do not believe that that actual Knights Templars were able to infiltrate Freemasonry and propagate those things. I do get asked from time to time if I've gone to collect my treasure in the Washington Monument, and I tell them no, I have not, and that's why I'm still working with you or doing some of those other things. But as we all know now, and Billy, you did refer to it as the Romantic period, there was a great deal of Masonic papers and books that were written from a very romantic point of view that did want to tie Masonry back to Moses, Abraham, and
the Egyptian
the
pyramid builders.
Right. And I personally just do not see it. I have not seen anything yet that would make a direct tie. But again, I pretty much always do try to read those things to see what they have to say. But the history of the Knights Templar is fascinating, and I never forget one of the most important discoveries actually came about right when I was becoming a Knight Templar myself, and that was the discovery in the Vatican Secret Archives of the Chinon parchment, which basically was the Inquisition by the Catholic Church that showed that the Knights Templars were actually innocent. And, that document had been rumored to have existed for a long time, and no one was ever able to find it until I believe her name was Barbara Vale. She was an employee of the Vatican Secret Archives and found it. So very much the Knights Templar are real, and but I just don't see the connection. But I certainly applaud folks for trying, and I'll keep reading to see what they have to say. But as of now, I don't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, we already kind of talked about what motivated you to become a Mason in the first place. What motivated you to specifically become a Knight Templar?
Well, and good question. I have always kind of thought of myself as an equal opportunity Mason, meaning that I enjoy all of it. But what really started me down the path the most of Knights Templar is really the fact that it is Christian, number one. Number two, the degree work. And of course, in as Knights Templar, instead of calling them degrees, we call them orders. But just for the purposes of this conversation, I'll kind of refer to them as degree work. I really loved the degree work the best, and specifically the Order of the Temple. To this day, I remember the day I got it. I remember who knighted me. And at that time, while I was city manager of Stanford, I also was a volunteer firefighter, and I worked as a firefighter on pit road at Texas Motor Speedway during NASCAR races. And I remember that I left at like 11 o'clock at night after getting my Order of the Temple, where I was actually the inspection candidate, and drove all night to Fort Worth, where I got to work the whole weekend at a NASCAR race. And I just remember being so excited that I couldn't even sleep even when I got to Fort Worth, because I was so impressed with the degree work and how well it was done. And then lastly, because when I did my Masonry in West Texas, a lot of my peers were very active as Knights Templar. You heard me reference earlier Jerry Pingle, but another good friend of mine there from Stanford is a Sir Knight by the name of Glenn McCandless, who actually is a past Grand Commander. And when I became a Knight Templar, he was like around the Grand Senior Warden of the Grand Commandery. So the Masons who were my mentors at that time were the most active as Knights Templar. So with me enjoying it as much as I have and being an earnest student, it was an easy transition for me to make.
Fantastic. At this time, we're going to start asking some more questions about the Grand Commandery of Texas. Billy, could you get us started on those?
Sure. So I remember actually during my Order of the Temple, one of the things you said specifically was about serving in the Grand Commandery and how it is a 10-year commitment. What motivated you to make yourself available for office, knowing that it would be a decade of service before you became Grand Commander yourself?
Yeah, and that's a really good question, Billy, and one that I think a lot of men ask themselves who contemplate being in the Grand Commandery line, and then a lot of people who never want to do it wonder, well, why would a Mason or a Sir Knight want to do that? And I can tell you that gosh, I just have always loved the Knights Templar, and it's always been so much fun to me. And I knew that I loved it, and I knew with it being a 10-year line that just gave me more time to enjoy it. In Texas, as we know, but for our audience, our Grand Lodge line is 4 years, our Grand Chapter line is 4 years, our Grand Council line is 3 years, and our Grand Commandery line is an elected 10-year line. I say that because in some Grand Commanderies, it's only a 4-year elected line. So our line is 10 years. And so I just loved it so much, and it gave me the opportunity to be active longer, but also because of my age at the time when I got in, I really had to think about it because I wasn't retired. I had been married at that time, I guess about 8 years. And when I got elected as Grand Sentinel, our son Jake was 6 months old.
so I was at that time not the typical Grand Commandery officer. We had just started in Texas. David Malaire, who's a very dear friend of mine, at that time was the youngest Grand Commandery officer, and then also Robert Laughlin got in, and so we had just started to get some Sir Knights in Texas who were a little bit younger. And, I was good friends with David and Robert, and they were a little bit younger. And I knew that while I worked and was a father and a husband, I felt that I had the energy and the passion to be able to devote the 10 years. But make no doubt, it was something that I talked about extensively with my wife. I knew what that commitment meant. And, I felt after prayer and talking about it with my wife and with my friends that quite honestly, that's where I could best help Masonry. And there's many, many, many fine men who would love to be in the Grand Commandery line, who would make great Grand Commanders, but just for one reason or another would not be willing or able to do the 10-year line, and inherently that can cause some issues. But I felt that I would be able to do it. And as I went through the line, you would think that 10 years would be a long time. You would think that it would be really slow. But what everyone told me, and I can vouch for this, and I tell people now, is that it goes by really fast. And it's like all of a sudden it sneaks up on you, and you get there. So it's a lot of fun, but I really enjoy coaching and mentoring, whether it's in city management or Boy Scouts, but also in Masonry. And while I am still young at 46, I've been active for quite a while, and I have had the pleasure and opportunity to talk to many Sir Knights who have contemplated being in the Grand Commandery line. And I think something that really helps is I'm able to talk to them about what it's like if you still work, or if you're married or not married, or if you have kids or you don't have kids, that I'm able to give a pretty realistic response on what that commitment takes. And you know what? It's not for everybody. But for those who it is for, everyone loves it. So it is a big commitment, no doubt. No doubt it's a big commitment, but it's one that, because you love it so much, it's not work. It's just all fun and enjoyment.
Well, and I guess it's kind of like what they say: if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. I mean, you're totally right, and wholeheartedly I agree.
So if I read your bio correctly, you went from being initiated and entered apprentice to being elected Grand Sentinel in 5 years. So when along that timeline did you figure out that you wanted to serve the Grand Commandery? Yeah,
I think, and it's kind of weird. It didn't seem like it was that short until you asked that question. To tell you the truth, it's kind of funny to hear you say that. But I knew that I fell head over heels in love with the Knights Templar the second I was created a Knight Templar, and again, because I got to experience spending time with Glenn McCandless in the Grand Commandery line, and then Jerry Pingle in the Grand Commandery line, I got to see what a family it is. Because we spend so many years with each other, we become really close to the other Sir Knights in the Grand Commandery line. We get to meet their lady, and that's what we refer to everyone's wife as a lady. I got to spend time with them and their kids, and you just become really, really close. And I just started traveling with Glenn and Jerry to help out, because I know I can do every part except for prelate, and even that I can do a fair amount of it. But I would go with them when they were making their inspection, and I would help fill in and form the lines or do other parts. And I would say probably about my third year is when I really started thinking about it. But, I didn't know what that would look like because I knew I was young, but I knew I was working. And lastly, I didn't know what that would look like because in Texas, we have 9 Templar districts. And actually, that is a big reason why it's a 10-year elected line. We divide the first 9 stations up to one of the 9 Templar districts. And I had realized that in Abilene, Stanford, where I was active at that time, is in Templar District 7 in Texas. And I did not think that it would be really possible to have Glenn McCandless from District 7 and Jerry Pingle from District 7 and me from District 7. So even though I was really active and I'd already gone all over the state helping Glenn and Jerry, I just thought that I would do it at some point in the future. Point to be determined. And then I ended up leaving Stanford after 4 years as the city manager, and I moved to Hillsboro, which is in the Waco area. And at that time, Bill Matiastic was deputy grand commander or going to be deputy grand commander and getting ready to go in as grand commander. And I knew that I was active and I loved it and enjoyed it. And I knew that with me moving to Hillsboro, I would be in a different Templar district, and thought that might be able to give me an opportunity to serve potentially a little bit sooner. And so while I had done the bulk of all my early Templar work in District 7, I actually got elected Grand Sentinel coming out of District 5, where Hillsboro Commandery and Waco Commanderies are. So that's how that happened, and that's how it happened so early. But the bottom line is I just always traveled around with Glenn and Jerry, and that's what they did. So that's what I did, and I loved it. And just getting to meet the Sir Knights from everywhere and getting to work and just realizing what a family it was, I knew that I loved that family and I wanted to be a part of that family. And again, going back to some of my approach now, that's why I love talking to so many Sir Knights, including y'all, and talking about how much I love that family and what it's like to be a member of the Grand Commandery family.
So you've talked a lot about the Grand Commandery family and how when you were elected Grand Sentinel, Jake was only 6 months old. So there's 10 years that go by. Almost every Sir Knight in the Grand Commandery of Texas has had the opportunity to meet Jake in person. So in what ways would you say that Jake has had the opportunity to grow up differently from most kids?
Yeah, Jake has gotten to go to a lot of Masonic meetings, and I some of my inspiration for that is past Grand Commander Paul Wunchy. His son Rex was a little bit older than Jake when Paul got in line, but Paul and his lady Becky, they would go on all their inspections together and take Rex. And my wife has always been a retail manager, so she would work a lot of nights and weekends. And, I love spending father-son time together with Jake, and I'm very passionate about Boy Scouts and Masons. And so I have taken Jake with me from the get-go. And there would be times where my wife was working, and when Jake was a baby, and I would take him to commandery meetings and order the temple practices, etc. And no doubt I have taken Jake all over the state for Knights Templar meetings for Grand Commandery, and he loves it. He cannot wait till he turns 18. He turns 11 on September 26th, so he's counting down the days. He already has his eyes on, my Sir Knight sword and my past commander sword and my Sir Knight and past commander chapeau. And what I would tell you is that Jake loves it, and it's important to him because he sees a family in it. But at the same time, I've also tried really hard, as I talked about earlier, to not force him to do it. He loves to go because he loves meeting other Masons and other Knights Templar, and because he's a boy, he, like me, like his dad, like y'all, he loves to see the sword work and other things. But there are many ways in which he has had a little bit different of a childhood, and Sure, he plays soccer and football and basketball and baseball and now karate. But he loves to go to Knights Templar meetings with me, and I'm so proud to take him. And like many dads, I cannot wait until the day he turns 18 and hope that he petitions the lodge, because it would certainly be my dream to confer and lecture all of his degrees and to knight him. But it's been my honor to take him with me and to share him. And he is so excited that I'm doing this tonight. He wanted to stay awake, and I wouldn't let him. But he is going to be really excited to listen to this podcast, because, like many, while he's almost 11, in certain ways, kids that age are much more technologically advanced than even some of us adults. So he's very familiar with podcasts, and he cannot wait to listen to this podcast.
That's
so
awesome.
I love him, and I'm proud of him, and I can't wait till he gets to sit in an asylum with us.
That's so
Very cool. Hello, Jake.
Yeah.
Hi, Jake. Yeah. So, Jack, what would you say, kind of a two-part question here. What would you say was the most challenging aspect of serving as a subordinate Grand Commandery officer? And what would you say was the most challenging aspect of serving as the Grand Commander?
Yeah, so good question, and what I can tell you is kind of like Billy said, when you love something, it's never work. And I think the most challenging time I had as a subordinate officer really had nothing to do with me being a subordinate officer. It was just the times. And what really helped me is, again, my day job as a city manager. So I was dealing with this at work as well, but I was in the Grand Commandery line during the Great Recession. And so just like while I was a city manager, I was trying to figure out how to cut budgets and how to not lay people off and how to still provide all the essential city services. In the Grand Commandery, we really had to cut our budget, and that really impacted a lot of the things that conceivably that we would be willing to do. And those were some really hard times for the Grand Commandery financially. Luckily, we had more than a century of good financial management, but it was tough as an officer to make some of the decisions that needed to be made at that time. We used to have a fully paid grand recorder, and we rented actually storefront office space, and that was one of the changes that we ended up making, was that we would not do that anymore, and we would slash that salary down, and we used to get some funds to help offset the cost of doing inspections or some mileage and things of that nature, and we really did some big slashing to the budget. But again, we loved it, and no one in the Grand Commandery line does anything to make money or to even be made whole. And we just did the things we needed to do to make it work. And then what was the most difficult thing that I dealt with as Grand Commander? Without a doubt, it was Hurricane Harvey. So many of my dear friends in the Houston area where I now live, lost everything. Just homes. And I talked to so many Sir Knights who were crying. They'd lost everything. And I'm actually getting kind of, emotional now, just even remembering that. As Masons, we always say that we'll help people, but we don't always have the opportunity to do that on a real large-scale event. And, we had past Grand Commanders. We had a past Grand Master of the Grand Encampment, Ken Fisher, who lost everything. And, in fact, some of those Sir Knights, it's only been in the last 8 weeks that they've gone back into a home. And we had lodge rooms that were destroyed. We had, uniforms, regalia gone, washed away, ruined. And that was really difficult. And what happened was that I'll never forget to this day. We in Texas decided to appropriate funds to help out and to do what we could to help some of those Sir Knights with a short-term recovery. And then I got a phone call that I still have saved on my voicemail from last year. I got a call out of the blue from the constituent recorder of Portland St. Alban Commandery in Portland, Maine, who called me up to say that the constituent commandery, not the grand commandery, his constituent commandery saw what had happened and called me as grand commander and said they had $5,000 to send to us, and what address should they mail it to? And
wow.
I'll never forget that. And I had the honor and pleasure last November and was accompanied by past Grand Commander Robert Laughlin, and we went to Portland, Maine, and I coordinated it with their Grand Commander at the time, Sir Knight Greg Chapman, and we kept it a secret from Portland St. Alban Commandery. And Robert Laughlin and I went up there for their annual inspection, and we brought greetings on behalf of the Sir Knights of Texas, and I took them a very large steel plaque that had the state of Maine in it, and it had the name of Portland St. Alban Commandery around it, and we took a plaque, and those were items that were donated to me from Weatherford Commandery to take up there and donate. So that was a very powerful thing, and that's something I'll never forget. And we did also have some other really big donations from Sir Knights here in Texas. And you heard me earlier mention past Grand Commander Bill Matiastic, but we received donations from his family as well. And anyways, that was the hardest thing that I dealt with in trying to help them out and to help them however I could.
All right. So if you don't mind, let's talk about your new role in the Grand Encampment. So, I mean, you have just left office as Grand Commander back in April, and you've already been appointed, the current Right Eminent South Central Department Commander, as we've mentioned. What is the role of the Department Commander for some of those who may not be aware?
Yeah, and that was a huge surprise and honor to me. I will tell you that there are many, many, many past Grand Commanders from Texas as well as other states here in the South Central Department Conference. So that was no doubt a big shock and surprise to me when I received that phone call. But the Grand Encampment is the United States and actually 22 countries. And just like many Grand Lodges, for example, have district deputies, if you will, the Grand Encampment, because of its size, not just domestically but internationally, the Grand Master does want to have the ability to have eyes and ears and to be able to visit all the jurisdictions. And because of its size, he cannot be everywhere all the time. So Grandmaster Jeffrey Norman Nelson, Sir Knight Nelson, is from Bismarck, North Dakota. He has appointed 12 department commanders, and there are 2 that cover basically South America and Central America, and then there's one for Europe. And then here in the United States, we are divided up, and there's 9 of us. And we are administratively over anywhere from roughly 6 states to 8 states. And so administratively, I assist the states of Arkansas, Kansas, Louisiana, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas. So I am the eyes and ears for the Grand Master, and it's my job to help each of those Grand Commanderies out. And I attend each of their Grand Conclaves for this entire 3-year triennium, as well as help put together, in our case for the South Central Department, help put together the one-day South Central Department Conference, which which is one day a year for these 3 years. And in fact, for us in the South Central Department is actually coming up the weekend after next, September 22nd of 2018, to be held in San Antonio. So it's my job to help put that on and to help out the various Grand Commanderies.
So right now you're serving as the department commander. What do you think lies in store for you in the next triennium?
Well, first of all, I certainly am enjoying my time now. I'm looking forward to doing, helping out these Grand Commanderies and putting on the department conference. No matter what, I know that I'm always going to be active and do something in Knights Templar, and at a minimum, being a department commander allows me to continue serving. And going forward, I'll always do my best to be active at the local commandery, which for me is Waco Commandery. Be active in the Grand Commandery of Texas. I, besides being a past Grand Commander, I do serve on the Finance Committee. And then for the Grand Encampment, I do currently serve as the chairman of the Preserving Templary 2021 Committee. And so while I'm sure there's potentially the opportunity to serve, in various capacities, one of the things that I've been working on is, after a lot of prayer and thought and conversation with others, I have made myself available for the Grand Captain General of the Grand Encampment. So no matter what, I'll always be active, but maybe even the potential to be in the elected Grand Encampment line. But that's whatever the pleasure is of the voting delegates of the Grand Encampment. But no matter what I'll do is continue to serve and love doing it. Again, Billy, I like how you said it. It's when it's fun, it's not work. But that's just kind of what I see happening after this triennium.
So that actually does lead me into my next question for you, and that is, how is the line for the Grand Encampment different than the Texas Grand Commandery line?
Yeah, so first of all, it is kind of funny, and one of the things that I have always said during my tenures in the Grand Commandery of Texas line is, to me, so many adults seem the same. Maybe we lose some hair or we gain some weight or our hair changes colors. But to me, the adults have seemed the same. And we were already talking about Jake. But, when I got elected, and I've got pictures when I was installed as Grand General, he was 6 months old, and now he's nearly 11. I'm 6'1", and he comes to my sternum. The Grand Encampment elected line is actually 12 years. So, conceivably, if I were to do that, 3 years as department commander and 12 years in the Grand Encampment line, that would be a total of 25 consecutive years. And that makes me realize Jake could already be married and have kids. So that really puts things into perspective for me. But having said that, the Grand Encampment, it meets every 3 years. So just a couple of weeks ago, it met, and it's triennial for 2018. And so it elects a total of 6 officers. 2 officers, Grand Recorder and Grand Treasurer, are not advancing, but those are elected and they're held for 3 years. And that's Sir Knight Bobby Simmons, past Grand Commander Georgia, is the Grand Treasurer, and Sir Knight Lawrence Eugene Tucker, past Grand Commander of Texas, is serving as the Grand Recorder. And the Grand Encampment line elects at Grand Captain General. And that position is currently held by Sir Knight Jeff Bolstadt, past Grand Commander of Montana. And that position will be held for 3 years, and then you would be Grand Generalissimo, which that position is currently held by Sir Knight David Cussman, past Grand Commander of California. And then after that position is Deputy Grand Master, and that position is held by Sir Knight Mike Johnson, who is a past Grand Commander of Wyoming. And then there is Grand Master, which I said earlier, that is Sir Knight Jeffrey Norman Nelson, a past Grand Commander from North Dakota. And so it is 4 stations, and you serve in each station for a total of 3 years. So it is a 12-year advancing elected line.
So speaking of the triennium, recently the Grand Lodge of Louisiana de-recognized the Grand Encampment of Knights Templar. You know, lots of reasons behind that. We're not going to go into the mud since all the dust is still kind of settling on that. But since Louisiana is in the South Central Department of the Grand Encampment, what impact does this have on your duties as department commander, and where do you see the situation with Louisiana going from here?
Yeah, and right now there's really not too much change with my duties. The Grand Encampment still recognizes the Grand Commander of Louisiana as a Grand Commandery, so we still recognize them. Being from Texas, I have many friends who are Masons, who are non-Masons, who are Sir Knights, and many in the Grand Commandery of Louisiana line. So I'm still friends with all of them. We're still all Masons, and I know that this is something that's being worked on very diligently by both the Grand Encampment and the Grand Commandery of Louisiana. And I'm very hopeful that hopefully a resolution can come about very soon to this. And I'm really looking forward to it, hopefully being resolved in a timely manner. And I look forward to being able to break bread with those Sir Knights very soon.
Yeah. So no, this is an interesting transition from that is, going back to, the original Knights Templar Order was formed 900 years ago in 1119. So we're reaching that special anniversary, right? That non-centennial. Are you aware of any events that the Grand Encampment has planned to commemorate that anniversary with our namesake?
Yeah, so no, definitely that is something that our Grand Master Sir Knight Nelson is working on, and we actually are encouraging that. We have that linked to the homepage of the Grand Encampment website, and we will be working with each of the Grand Commanderies and encouraging them, as well as at the constituent commandery, to do a special 900th anniversary event. I can tell you that the weekend immediately following a triennial, San Bernardino Commandery in California actually already has had a 900th anniversary event. So that is something that our Grand Master Sir Knight Nelson places a high priority on, and obviously we're pretty proud of it. That is a long history, although as referenced earlier, probably not a 900 consecutive years, but one that we're really looking forward to. And of course, during the last triennium, we celebrated the 200th anniversary of the Grand Encampment. And now we are celebrating the 900th anniversary of the Knights Templar. So look for a lot more information to come on that during the next 3 years, or during this coming 3 years. But yes, we're going to be encouraging everyone to have an event.
So we used to have a really awesome KT apron. What happened to it, and what will we have to do to get it back as part of our regular regalia?
That's a good question, Gabe.
And you said that they actually mentioned it by name at the department commander training.
Yeah, so that is a really cool apron, and no doubt I have seen them around during some of my Masonic travels, and they are fascinating to look at. And what I can tell you is right now, while there is no doubt, some really, really interesting symbolism found in that apron, it's just not something that the Grand Encampment is really looking at fostering at this time. With the current uniform that we wear, just an apron is not real conducive to it. And I think right now as well, with us doing more and more a lot of public events like honor guards and flag ceremonies and Templar burial services. Just kind of right now, I don't know that an apron with some of that symbolism is probably what we would be focusing on. It might end up bringing a lot more questions that could end up taking away from what we're really trying to do that day or that event if we had them on. So, maybe at some point in the future, but for right now, probably not. But they do remain a really interesting historical aspect of the fraternity and where we've come from as Knights Templar.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we've talked about is that Templary is pretty dependent on the Christian faith, and right now the laws of the Grand Encampment explicitly require each petitioner to be a, quote, firm believer in the Christian faith. And I've heard some brethren and some Sir Knights suggest that the requirement in Christian faith be dropped in order to make Templary more accessible within Masonry. I kind of already have a feeling about what your thoughts are on this, but what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, and I think, every Sir Knight or future Sir Knight has to decide for themselves, if they're able to answer that question in all honesty and truthfulness. And so long as they can reconcile that out in their mind, then that is something for them to process. As for me personally, and not speaking on behalf of the Grand Encampment or the Grand Commandery of Texas, my personal opinion is that the Knights Templar were created as a Masonic organization for those who were Christian or who were at least willing to declare a willingness to support and defend the Christian religion. And for those individuals who have gone through the degree work, it is very much Christian based, and it would probably not mean as much if someone were not a Christian, and they probably also would not enjoy it as much. So, I don't know what the future holds, but I don't know what the timeline would be if that requirement were to be waived. But I don't know that I see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I had a conversation with a brother who was thinking about joining the York Rite, but he says he is a deist, and he really is not particularly interested in converting or anything, which is fine, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, and I totally respect that.
Yeah.
And that's what I was talking about earlier is that I don't want to have to convince or sway or force or coerce any man to be a Mason or a York Rite Mason or a Knight Templar. Again, I really want them to do it of their own free will and accord, and again, they have to have the ability to reconcile that out. And whenever I speak to Masons who those are their beliefs, I am very fine with that, and supportive of them and what their beliefs are, and very understanding if they're not able to become a member.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I told him basically, man, absolutely join chapter and council. And yeah, we've had this conversation about Commandery. I don't know if you legally can join based off of the current laws, and I don't know that you would get a huge bang for your buck. Just kind of the way it is. But at the very least, enjoy the first two, because there's a wealth in those. I wanted to ask, kind of rewinding back to the Grand Commandery of Texas, one of the things that's different about the Grand Commandery is that in other Texan grand bodies, the organization itself fronts the money for hosting the Grand Communication. But in the Grand Commandery of Texas, the Grand Commander himself has to, kind of ensure all the hotel room nights, and he has to make the initial investments for the banquets and stuff. What are the origins of this practice? Is that tied into the financial, the big recession, or is that older?
No, yeah, that's older. Great question. I don't actually know when that started, but it's been around as long as I've been in, and I'm sure quite longer. But for those of us or those of you listening from other jurisdictions, in Texas, the Grand Lodge, Grand Chapter, Grand Council always meets in Waco, Texas, in our Grand Lodge building, and they are responsible for making their own hotel reservations, and the Grand Secretary and Grand Recorder of Grand Lodge Chapter Council basically helps coordinate the banquets and get them done and organize the caterer, et cetera, et cetera. But the Grand Commandery, we travel, and our annual Grand Conclave is held wherever the seated Grand Commander would like to have it. And so when you get elected Grand Sentinel, you have 10 years to think about and plan for it. And again, that seems like a really long time, but as crazy as it sounds, it can sneak up on you if you're not ready. But yes, the Grand Commander or whoever he helps kind of put on a team that helps him is ultimately and solely responsible for having a meeting place venue, for having hotel rooms available, for scheduling banquets, for getting the meals catered, for having entertainment, and making sure that every single logistic item is taken care of. Every I is dotted and every T is crossed. And that does require a pretty significant financial investment. And when I talk to potential Sir Knights who are interested in making themselves available, I make sure that I'm very open and honest with them about what that looks like and what the financial contribution looks like. Currently, for Grand Commandery officers, they receive a slight mileage stipend. It is less than the IRS amount. And so you do have 9 years worth of travel with a slight mileage stipend. And then when you are Grand Commander, the Grand Commandery currently, that doesn't mean it won't change up or down, but currently provides the Grand Commander with a $6,000 allowance, and that's to use however he sees fit. And then the Grand Commandery also provides $8,000 to what's known as the host commandery, so the closest local commandery responsible for putting on the Grand Conclave. These events cost far more than $8,000, and the Grand Commander is going to spend far more than $6,000 in traveling or getting items squared away for the Grand Conclave. And so you will see many Sir Knights in the Grand Commandery line do fundraisers. Sir Knight Jernigan has sold T-shirts and artist prints. Our Grand Commander Richard Doss, I remember, sold baseball caps. I remember a while back, Sir Knight Dave Malier sold wooden engraved pins. We've had polo shirts. We've had a lot of different items. I did not sell any items. I was able to financially be able to do that. And then I did also take in donations and just really kind of stockpiled stuff up over the years. But it definitely takes a big financial commitment, and that's why I try to be really open and honest with potential guys who want to run for the line, that they know that that's the way it is. Maybe it'll change someday, but as far as now, that's the way it is, and maybe it'll change, but for now, I don't see it in the short term.
What kind of total cost would a Grand Commander expect to see to put on the Grand Commandery conclave, and how much of that would he normally recoup?
Yeah, a good question, and I hate to give you the attorney answer of it depends, but I'm going to give you the it depends answer. And why I say that is it depends where the Grand Conclave is held. I had mine in Waco, and at the time I was assistant city manager of Waco, and I had access to the Waco Convention Center and to many other venues in Waco, and was very close to the Asylum of Waco Commandery. The 2019 Grand Conclave will be in San Angelo. Room rates are significantly cheaper in San Angelo than Waco. Waco now has the highest hotel occupancy rate of any city in the state of Texas, and so there's many variables in that. I think it also depends. Does the Grand Commander, has he sold things throughout the years? How good is he at budgeting and managing his money, or how good is he at taking in donations, or other type things to help offset some of the costs? But having said that, turnkey, when you're looking at banquet tickets, and in Texas, we have many banquets and not just one, and we do have field drill competition where we have to have large spaces to do field drill, and then we do give away some financial awards to ritualistic winning teams and to drill competition teams. But in 2018, that grand annual conference was probably around $35,000 to $40,000 cumulatively, and you as the Grand Commander, you can sell meal tickets, and so obviously you don't want to lose money on your meal tickets. So a fair amount of that cost of that, roughly, let's say $35,000, about $15,000 of that may be meals. So long as you do a good job of making sure you're not losing money on your meal tickets, but yet you have to make sure you're providing a value. If you set your plates too high, then people may not want to buy the meal, and then you lose money. So it's certainly a fine line, and it depends on where you have the session. But it actually provides a whole other level to being the Grand Commander versus when you're Grand Master of the Grand Lodge or Grand High Priest or Grand Master of the Grand Council, because not only does the Grand Commander have to preside, but he's also ultimately wholly responsible for hotel rooms and meals. And I've seen things where people didn't get fed, or their food was cold, or there was an issue with the hotel room, and who gets blamed? It's the Grand Commander. So it's a big deal. And, I really looked at it as it was almost like a wedding. There's years and years of planning that goes into it, and you want it to be right, and you want it to be perfect. And you just hope and pray you put a good structure in place, and that you've got everything good to go, because once the Grand Conclave starts, it's gonna go. And hopefully the Grand Commander has put everything in place that it'll go smoothly and efficiently.
So I want to move into a quick section that I called kind of jokingly Six Sigma Templary. And it's just a bunch of little things, what can we do about this, or what problems do we see with this kind of questions. So in my personal experience, I've talked to a lot of brethren that would love to get involved with, or they would strongly benefit from being in the Knights Templar, because it is a Christian Masonic body. And some of these are guys that have been knighted but are not active, but they don't want to deal with the Class A uniform or even the cap and mantle uniform. What can we do to make Templary more accessible to these individuals?
And that's something that I have really thought a lot about, Gabe. In fact, last year, one of the things that we did was we put out a survey to all the Sir Knights in Texas to basically find out what did they like or not like in Texas, or what would they like to see improved. And here's what's interesting, is that the respondents to the survey showed a high appreciation for the uniform. And that was something that I really wanted to inquire about, because I have heard a lot of the same comments that you have had and heard. And on one hand, I wonder, is that an excuse? And if you remove the financial aspect, which make no doubt that's big, okay? But how many people just don't want to wear a uniform, whatever it is, if it's cap and mantle or it's a summer uniform for some jurisdictions or Class A's. I think there's some men, whether they're Masons or not, that they really just don't have a desire to wear a uniform. I think that that is a little bit difficult, because when you look at the Grand Commandery of whatever jurisdiction you're in, because it's under the Grand Encampment, we are actually a uniformed order. So when we're doing initiatory or ritualistic work, we do have to be in uniform. That doesn't mean we have to be in uniform for every, constituent commandery meeting. But when we do our work, we do. So we do have different options throughout the Grand Encampment. There is the Class A uniform. There is the cap and mantle, which you referred to. There's also a summer uniform, which is like a white button-down short sleeve shirt that it has epaulets, and that's where you would put your rank, and it's with flax, and it just has a fatigue cap instead of a chapeau. And then we also have a fatigue uniform, which is a little bit more of a relaxed look as well versus the Class A. So, the Grand Encampment does have 4 separate uniforms authorized for wear. Each of them, kind of cap and mantle to summer uniform to fatigue uniform to Class A, to kind of do our best to hit every style. And we do have different headgear authorized, again, whether it's the cap for the cap and mantle to bell cap, fatigue cap to chapeau. But on one hand, as I mentioned, having a uniform can be expensive. And I know many commanderies have like an armory, or they have the ability to wear basically hand-me-down items. And I can tell you, I wore hand-me-down items for years. And there's nothing wrong with that at all, whether it's the uniform or the belt or the sword or the chapeau. We do whatever it takes. And I'm certainly not going to give any Sir Knight a hard time who is doing his best to be in uniform. But when we talk about not having a uniform at all, I think that's one of the things that is difficult, and certainly not on the same level as every Knight Templar being a Christian. But since we are a uniformed order, that is one of the things that we ask our Sir Knights to do. And again, a uniform is not for everyone. And while I would love for everyone to be a Knights Templar, I do realize that wearing a uniform may not be for every person. So, I'd love to have them, but I don't know that I see a time where there's no uniform requirement.
Mm. Do you ever see anything, so for the Knights of Columbus, right, they had a change where they have the 4th degree, which is not Knight Templar, but it's similar in that there is a uniform with, a Class A type uniform. And they changed their 4th degree uniform to a simpler uniform of a black suit, a military beret with an officer's rank patch on the front, and a baldric, and of course the sword. For our listeners that don't know, a baldric is like a kind of sash. Do you ever see the Grand Encampment maybe moving towards something like that, where that's maybe even a little more low-key, but still kind of official? Hey, you're still wearing a suit. Hey, you're still wearing headgear of some kind.
Yeah, and I was aware of when the Knights of Columbus did that. They did that last year. No, I really don't have any idea on if and when that would happen. But what I would say is that any member of Grand Encampment always has the ability to bring forward a resolution for everyone to take a look at to see if there's interest in doing that. So there's nothing that precludes a voting delegate of Grand Encampment to offer up a resolution like that. But I'm not aware of anything in the pipeline at this time.
Okay. Different, kind of totally a different vein. Modern Templary seems to be really big on drill teams and drilling. Do you know what kind of the origins of that are? Because we talk about the chivalric orders of Christianity and this deep tradition, and all of a sudden in the middle of it, not to say that there's anything wrong with it, but all of a sudden we've got drill. Where and why did we start doing that?
Yeah, so after the Civil War, that is when our uniforms became basically the wool frock coat, and perhaps many of our listeners have seen those uniforms, and there's still some Grand Commanderies that wear them. Actually, I spoke about them earlier, but the Grand Commandery of Maine, they still wear, basically that uniform. But there was a lot of manufacturers after the Civil War that made Civil War uniforms, and they were able to find the Knights Templar as a willing group to buy those uniforms. And a lot of the men who were in the Civil War, regardless of side, wore uniforms like that. And so it was a natural progression for them to wear uniforms as Knights Templar. And from the Civil War forward through World War I and World War II and other things, since we are a uniformed order, and then many of our men do come from a military background or have proudly served in our armed forces, it was a kind of a natural thing for them, since they were basically wearing a military uniform to do drill. But what I can tell you is that not every Grand Commandery does drill. A fair amount of Grand Commanderies used to do it. Not as many do it today. The Grand Encampment separates drill competitions into four sizes. Class A is the largest, down to Class B, Class C, and then finally Class D. And so many Grand Commanderies do proudly drill, but also some don't. So it just depends on the jurisdiction where you're in. And then even when you are in a jurisdiction, it depends on where you live in that jurisdiction as to if drill is something that's there. But basically it comes from the military background of the members of the Knights Templar. They were already in the military. They did drilling and wore uniforms there, and then it was a very easy progression for them as they came into the Knights Templar to continue to propagate drill and along with the wearing of the uniform. So that's actually how that comes from. And for those of us here in Texas, we are one of the ones that proudly drills, and there is a big emphasis placed on it here in our state as well as other states.
So have any of the commanderies that you've been a member of ever done anything like a Bible study?
Not as a set commandery, but many of us all go to the same church or to the same couple of churches, and inherent in us being Christians and being members of the Knights Templar, we are a very religious based Masonic organization, even more so than some of the other organizations out there. And not so to answer your question, not specifically related to the commandery, but many of us, on our own time, do Bible studies together. But it's more from the church that we go to.
Okay, so it's very much more independent.
That I'm aware of. Yeah.
So let's say I want to get the Knights of my Commandery all to go on like a rotating schedule and visit each other's churches, all kind of as a Commandery, not in uniform or anything like that, but, one guy says, hey, come to my church next week. Let's go to, John Smith's church, etc. Do you have any advice or thoughts on how a Commandery could best do that? Kind of rules of thumb?
That's a good question. I think that already many of us that are Masons, do already go to different churches, and whether we're solely in Blue Lodge or we're Blue Lodge and Scottish Rite Masons or Shrine or whatever, I think that many of us already do go to different churches and everything. But I think I would just really kind of, to do what you're talking about, I would kind of think you would want to have some kind of a focus on what you're trying to accomplish and kind of what the goal is. And is it to expose the members in a positive way to some of the different Christian doctrines that are out there? Certainly I think that would be very worthwhile. But, in many ways, I also think that would be, to a certain degree, outside the basic scope of just a regular Commandery. And, I don't know about it being a formal Commandery activity, whereas it would be certainly more of a among friends, let's go visit and do this for an overall religious enhancement and betterment of us as Christians and Masons.
Okay. One of the things that Masonry, all of Masonry suffers from this, whether it's the Scottish Rite or the Shrine or the various York Rite bodies, or most importantly, the Craft Lodge. But one of the biggest problems that we see in Templary is that a lot of constituent commanderies don't seem to be satisfying the needs of their members, right? And this could be anybody, but we're talking about Templary here. In what ways have you seen commanderies fall short when it comes to member satisfaction?
And what a powerful question that is. And that was something that I was really looking for us to find out in the survey we did last year. Because of my job, I am keenly focused on effectiveness and efficiency, but at the same time, basically customer satisfaction. And I think a lot of times our members, whatever organization we're in, or even service organization or church, people are always looking for a return on their investment. And that doesn't necessarily mean with money, but they're looking for that time away from their home or family or Boy Scouts or whatever church, whatever else it may be, to be worth it. And what the results of the survey came back was that those commanderies that were very active, those that did flag presentations, those that had educational meetings, those that did degree work, those that had drill teams, those that were busy, is where the members tended to have the biggest and most amount of satisfaction. And the trouble spots were with commanderies that were fewer and farther between, due to maybe like being in West Texas, or where there was where it was harder to visit. And so distance, and then not being as active. And that doesn't mean that they're not greats or knights, and they do a great job in opening or closing. But for the new Sir Knight, regardless of age, It's fun when you're knighting people, and when you're having more meetings, and when you're learning things, and when you're doing programs, and when you're coming to Grand Commandery, or you're going to Grand Encampment Triennial, or you're going to your department conference. That's what keeps men coming back. And, you know, it's an interesting dichotomy. On one hand, you think, wow, we'll do so much stuff that we're going to run the Sir Knight off. Well, really, it's the more work that's going on, and where that Sir Knight is invited to become a part of that work. And, you know, that is something that's really big with me. Y'all were asking me some questions about when I first got started. And again, I've always loved the ritual. Fortunately, I've been pretty blessed with a pretty decent memory. And I was trusted and empowered to learn the work as a young Mason and as a young Sir Knight. And so, you know, I wasn't told to go sit on the sidelines and watch all the time. I mean, I got to work from day one. And so I think it's us putting the Sir Knights to work and letting them know we care. And then also taking feedback. You know, again, going back to the survey, you know, I had Sir Knights tell me, wow, I've never been asked before. You know, I've never thought about that. You know, that's some of the responses I got. And I think that as an organization and Masonry at whole, or whatever we are in our jobs, and even us as humans and Christians, we should always be constantly striving to do better. And, you know, if we need to do certain things to adapt or modify, then that's what we need to do. Last year, we made a really, really big concerted effort to focus a lot more on Facebook. You know, I had a designated Sir Knight. It was Sir Knight Ricky Cox to do our Facebook, and we became known all over the Grand Encampment for a lot of the Facebook things that we do. And I'm very proud to know that one of our hosts tonight, Sir Knight Billy Hamilton, is proudly carrying on that tradition and doing a bang-up job on Facebook. And I've learned that there's Sir Knights of all ages, from the 20s all the way to the 90s, who are Facebook users. Some it comes more natural too, but the bottom line is we need to keep the Sir Knight active, and we need to communicate with him, and we need to communicate with him in a manner and a forum he understands, whether that's snail mail, email, Facebook, text message. Hey, whatever it is, we need to let that Sir Knight know that we care. And if he wasn't here at our last meeting, by golly, we missed him. And that's what it's all about. And again, circling back on a theme I often say about Knights Templar is we really are a family. And, you know, whether it's drill or ritual competition or just a meeting, inherently Knights Templars are very close. And we really are a family. And I think at the end of the day, it's letting that Sir Knight know that he's a part of the family, and we're glad to have him as a part of the family. And we miss him when he's not there.
Engagement is the key here with the local constituent commanderies and getting them to come to stuff and putting on events and just being active all the time. How does that change when you go from the constituent commandery level to the grand commandery level to the grand encampment level? Like, you know, how do we fire on all cylinders?
You know, number one, it's important for the Grand Commandery to always be listening to its constituent commanderies, just like it's important for the Grand Encampment to be listening to its Grand Commanderies. And that's why the Grand Encampment officers and the department commanders come to the Grand Commanderies. You know, we want to make sure that things are going well, and we also want to be there to offer up help and assistance and advice if need be. And the Grand Encampment is only healthy if a Grand Commandery is healthy. And the Grand Commandery is only healthy if its constituent commanderies are healthy. So, not trying to be cliche, but, you know, together everyone accomplishes more. And we're all in it together. And so Just because, for example, I'm a department commander, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go to my own Grand Commandery meetings. And just because, I was Grand Commander didn't mean I didn't want to do things in my own commandery. And, I'm very proud of Waco Commandery. We have a lot of great young Sir Knights, and Sir Knight John Spann does a really good job of helping and teaching and coaching and mentoring those Sir Knights. And I love conferring the Order of the Temple and knighting new Sir Knights. And so that transition is actually really easy to make because you're all doing it for the same reason. Now, certainly there were some times, not that often, when I had to miss a Waco Commandery meeting because of Grand Commander duties, but it did happen every now and then. And now, as Department Commander, with me traveling out of state and in other states throughout the Grand Encampment, I'm sure there may be some other things I'll miss, but it's never forget where you came from. And as for me, I remember when I was a 31-year-old adult, and when I was knighted, and I remember my mentors reaching out to me and encouraging me and pushing me to do more and pushing me to do better. And I know that's what I perceive as my role now, and is helping to coach and mentor and from the Grand Encampment level, encouraging the Grand Commanderies, and as well as the Sir Knights from the constituent commandery. So I know it's a big step up, but we're really still doing the same thing, and we're all serving the same organization that we love, and that's the Knights Templar.
So, and I was going to say also, as department commander, I know your time is stretched even, more thin, but the way you confer the Order of the Temple, because I received it when you conferred it upon me, I hope, that you still have the opportunity to confer that, because the way you do it is amazing. So.
And thank you. I appreciate that. And I do love to do it. And, I've already done it numerous times this calendar year. And, yes, my plan is to keep doing it. And so long as Waco Commandery or another commandery would like me to come out and assist, I will do that. And I am actually due to go to back to Maine here at the end of September. They actually have the only commandery that meets on an island. It is called De La Voix Commandery, and they are on the island of Vinyl Haven, off the coast of Maine, kind of equidistant between Portland and Bangor. And I'm going to be going up there for their inspection in a couple of weeks. I won't be conferring, but I might be a part of the conferral. And but yes, I love to confer the Order of the Temple. And even if I never do it again, which I doubt, I know that I'd love to do it for Jake. But I appreciate the kind words, Billy. And it's something I take very personal. And it's something I pay forward because, as I said, I still remember the day and the night when I was knighted. And that same experience and goosebumps and chills I got is something I love doing and paying it forward. And Billy, you've heard it, and Gabe has heard it, but one of the things that I tell when I remember every candidate is I pretty much tell them whether I'm conferring it or not. I usually tell them in advance, hey, I've seen a lot of Masonic degrees, and of all those degrees, this is my favorite one. And if at the end of this order conferral, you tell me this is not the most powerful and impressive Masonic degree work you've ever seen, I'll pay you the dues or the initiation fee you paid. And I'm pretty proud to say that I have yet to have to pay that.
Yeah, I remember standing in the lobby of Weatherford Commandery, and you told the candidates that, and they all kind of like they all exchanged looks real quick, and I was just like, I just stood there and I was like, yep, I mean, Yep, that's the truth. Because I always tell people, the Order of the Temple is everything I ever thought a Masonic degree would ever or could ever be.
Right. Yeah.
So, but
Agreed.
yeah, this has been a fantastic conversation. We've gone on for quite a while. So I'd like to proffer the fraternal quote of the week, although I don't know if it's appropriate to call it fraternal, but we'll call it the Templaric quote of the week. Keep alert. Stand firm in your faith. Be courageous. Be strong. Let all that you do be done in love. That's 1 Corinthians 16, verses 13, 14 from the New Revised Standard Edition of the Holy Bible. So, if we can get some closing thoughts from the hosts, and our fearless leader, Rhit, has been very quiet this episode, but he can go first if he wants to, and then Billy, myself, and then we'll get Jack.
No, I think something that you guys especially and other guys in our lodge that have branched out and joined these appendant bodies has really brought light to me how important they are to our fraternity as Masons, as Blue Lodge Masons, because there is a lot you can get out of the Blue Lodge, but there's so much more that can add to it if you find your niche in one of these appendant bodies. I mean, Gabe in particular, I mean, he joined the Scottish Rite, and he's like, yeah, that's cool. He joined Templar, and it was like, he was turbo boosting, and it bled into his Blue Lodge experience as well. And I think that's important for guys to do, and I was glad you were able to come on, Jack, and explain what it's all about. So guys that were on the fence might actually take that plunge.
Yep. So, Jack, thank you for, again, as incredibly busy as you are, for taking the time to come onto the show. And I know we've already talked about, we have a ton of material, and we've already written out a whole bunch of questions we want to ask you about some of the other bodies here associated with, such as the SRICF, the AMD, the Knight Masons, and others, right? Because you are involved in so much, and we want to know more. So, I do have to say, though, I agree with you wholeheartedly. If anyone asks me, what my favorite degree is that I've seen, it's always that Order of the Temple, because when you have it done right, I don't think any other can really touch it. And I'm glad that you were able to confer mine, because you can tell the the pride, the emphasis, the love you actually put into that ritual. So it really kind of inspired me, as Rhit said, in Blue Lodge too, to try and put that same level of emphasis into it. So that inspired me. So thank you.
And Jack, like everyone else has already said, thank you very much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. One of the things I kind of want to leave our listeners with is that a lot of people say that the Order of the Temple is life-changing. I would say that they are not wrong. For me, it was not really life-changing. For me, it was a profound affirmation of the choices that I've made as a man, as a Mason, and most importantly, as a Christian. I was not a Christian for most of my life. I came to Christianity in college, but I was not very good at it in terms of knowing things and understanding things and actually practicing Christianity. And after I graduated college and I kind of moved out on my own, and I started attending church by myself and having to learn more about individual traditions, I started getting deeper and deeper into my own faith and really getting some very profound and easily noticeable spiritual rewards out of it. And when I joined Masonry, I kind of my dad described it. He says you were pretty religious, but then you went and became a Mason. Then you got really religious, and KT, the whole Knight Templar experience was just a huge, like it was like strapping a rocket onto the course of my faith, because I was already chugging along, and then this just kind of turbo boosted it. So I'm always going to be grateful to everyone that was involved in that experience, because it resonates so strongly with my faith. Jack, if you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners, we'd welcome them at this time.
Yeah. Again, I just would like to thank the three of y'all for allowing me the opportunity to come on and to take a moment to thank each of y'all for what you do. Really enjoy the podcast, and I enjoy listening to Masonic podcasts. And I've watched you, Billy and Gabe, over the last year, and Rhit, believe it or not, I remember when you first got into to Masonry. So I was just down the road from you in Hillsborough, and I remember when you came on and got active, and you were one of the leaders in social media for Texas Masonry back in the day, and I remember that. So I wanted to make sure I told y'all thank you for your labor of love in this podcast and helping to propagate this organization we love so dearly. Having said that, I do enjoy all Masonry, and Rhit, I like what you said about the Blue Lodge, and I'm proud to say that I've recently restood my A exam, my A certificate exam. I've held an esoteric certificate in Lodge Chapter Council for 15 years, and I love to do the ritualistic work. But I thank you guys, and I thank you for letting me talk about the Masonic organization I love the most, the Knights Templar. I am passionate about it. It's what I've devoted, hard to believe, 15 years of my life to, and that I will keep doing. And I encourage any of you all or any of your listeners that if they ever have any questions or they want to talk to somebody, all of my contact information is actually found on the Grand Encampment website under the Department Commander section, or if not there, in one of the numerous other Masonic organizations you can track me down in. But certainly love the opportunity to answer any questions or help out however I can. And with that, just thanks so much for having me, and thank you guys for what you do. I appreciate the honor to be on here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's been our pleasure. Your zeal's contagious for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, let's close this thing down then. This is Rhit Morse signing off.
This is Billy Hamilton signing off.
This is Gabe Jagush signing off.
This is Jack Harper. Appreciate y'all. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.